This is Clyde's Honest Reviews, and where I have a strict set of rules that I follow upon reviewing new and old titles alike, and whether or not I would recommend them to the average viewer. What's important to you guys is also important to me. And the biggest factor in recommendations in video games comes down to the amount of enjoyment I can get out of my money, which leads to the major factors of my review system. You got the pros, the cons, the potential, and most importantly, gameplay hours, or likely gameplay hours versus the cost of the game. Why did I make this system? Well, because I got tired of hearing about people recommending games based on the content or the story of them alone. Sure, a great story and mechanics go a long way. I'm not saying that they don't. But when everything is said and done, if the game's only fun for one playthrough, or I can get 100% of it done, as in all of the achievements done within 30 hours, I shouldn't be paying $60 for it. What's going on, everybody? This is Clydian Fayre, and first and foremost, I want to welcome you all to the channel. We're going to be putting the rest of the fluff to the side and getting on into the content. After all, that's what you're here for. Total War Warhammer 3. It's a title that's been around for almost a year now, and after almost a year of updates and balancing, is it actually worth getting? I recently picked up this title about a month ago, maybe two, and I've definitely been giving it some solid playtime. But there's definitely some beef to be had with Creative Assembly and how they decided to implement the Warhammer trilogy. Veterans of the Total War franchise. You already know the main mechanics here. If you played any of the Warhammer games, you know what this is all about anyway. If you've only played Medieval or Shogun, just add monsters and flying units as well as magic and you've basically got Warhammer 3. I'm not going to go super in depth on the mechanics of this franchise since it's well established. Creative Assembly has been making Total War games for over 2 decades now. To fully experience Warhammer 3, you need to not only own all the DLC for Warhammer 3, but you need to own Warhammer 2, Warhammer 1, and all the DLC for both previous installments. That's a serious chunk of change. Like, with that whopping price tag, what are the selling points for this game? Warhammer 3, like its predecessors, utilizes Total War's classic battle system and turn-based faction management mechanics. This lets players manage their faction's economy, recruit units, build buildings, and wage war on their respective turns. Well, that was the case. Except now Creative Assembly decided that all players can take their turn simultaneously whenever they play multiplayer. Oh, yeah, and there's no longer a limit of 2 players in a multiplayer lobby. So you can finally make that 8-person hug box you've always dreamed of, fighting off undead, demons, and monsters. You think that this change would be amazing and it's groundbreaking, except it sounds a lot nicer on paper. You'll find yourself constantly locked into your turn whether another player needs to make a decision or wage war, not to mention if multiple players open the diplomacy page of the same faction, the entire game and server crashes. Sure, it's nice being able to manage your economy and whatnot while your teammates or opponents perform their turns, but the constant locking up of your interface when there's more than 2 people in a match is a bit excessive and ultimately detracts from the experience. This can all be circumvented by turning off the simultaneous turn feature or creating an unspoken rule with your playing group to make the experience more streamlined and less clunky, or just not having friends. Most of my multiplayer experience has been in the Immortal Empire's map, since this is essentially the main reason you'd want to get the game, because it's a giant conglomerate of every faction ever implemented in the Warhammer trilogy, and the map is simply massive. Turn-based clunkiness aside, Warhammer 3 adds in quite a few new factions, and they offer more DLC. Go figure. The new factions feel unique and strong and are definitely fun to play. I can honestly say that I haven't found a faction that I don't enjoy playing. The updated graphics look great, magic always feels strong, animations are pretty seamless, and honestly, just using a bunch of monsters to completely level a city is an amazing feeling. Defensive siege battles also got a rework. Now players are able to utilize supplies that are generated over time to build mini towers that automatically fire upon enemies at range. You can also target specific units with them, as well as create barricades and traps. The towers also have a progression system. So at first they shoot arrows, but over time they will launch magic orbs and deal area damage if you choose to spend the resources to upgrade them. Not to mention, there is a ton, I mean a ton of replayability value in Warhammer 3. Or just in Warhammer in general. To actually have a single run of each faction start, you're looking at several hundred hours of content. More so, if you wish to play with friends and experience all the single player campaigns separately, there's simply just too much content to be able to easily estimate. If you want to 100% the title and experiment with each new lord and visit upon the updates of the older factions, you can't easily put a timestamp on that. So what's the catch to all the cool implementations in this new installment? It's quite simple, really. It's the massive amount of funds it takes to actually own the full game. Creative Assembly, like most large studios, have adopted the milking their players dry approach. Brilliant, right? Just owning the 3 base games together costs roughly $180 before taxes, assuming they're not on sale. I don't even want to think about how much all the DLC costs when tacked onto that bill. I don't. I own all of it, but I don't want to think about how much money that would cost. I've got about 400 hours into the entire Warhammer trilogy altogether, which I believe is the only fair way to give a proper review of Warhammer 3. So, yeah, I get it, Clyde. What does this all mean? Let's break it down. The pros. Great graphics. I mean, astounding graphics if your computer can handle it. If it's not, your computer will chug. But it still looks great. Satisfying animations and combat. And microing a lord makes you feel like a god. There is a snot monster that can create snot bubbles that explode and just wipe entire armies. I'm not even making this up. The cons is the biggest con, and the only con in my opinion, is the amount of money it costs to fully experience the game. It's just too much. It's absurd. Here, and so with that, knowing that, what is the bottom line? What's the ratio here? Well, it technically beats my 1 hour of entertainment to $1 ratio. It does. It technically does. It just doesn't. I don't feel good about saying that though. Nobody ever wants to drop several $100s on a game at once. Even $60 on a title these days feels pretty steep. If you're able to wait for a sale on Humble Bundle or manage to catch it when it's on sale on Steam or in general, I definitely recommend picking it up. Or at least owning Warhammer 3 gives you the opportunity to experience the game and then pick up Warhammer 1, Warhammer 2, and all the DLCs whenever they're on sale. Keep your eyes peeled if you have any interest in the game, because catching one of these titles or any of the DLC in a Humble Monthly Bundle or Steam sale will drastically increase your content to dollar ratio, and I mean, it'll easily push this into a must-have. Yeah, hands down. So that's generally the gist of it. I'd like to thank you all for coming and sticking around for the video, and if you enjoyed or appreciated this content and would like to see more review videos such as this, drop a comment and like the video, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Have a good one.